Today I would like to talk about the design aspect of the bonsai, and I'm sure you have bonsai trees which haven't received critical sort of reviewing of the design aspect,
Right.
how to develop for the future and so on. So I'd like to discuss today a few points, important points about design aspect of bonsai. First thing I have to explain what bonsai is supposed to do to the viewer is that bonsai is to evoke a landscape. Not any landscape, but a very specific landscape that this particular tree is purported to have grown over many years. Not in a pot, but in this landscape. Yeah. So single tree's form is a result of two factors. One is tree's nature to grow towards the light against the gravity. And other factor is the environment in which tree has no freedom of running away. So inevitably, tree being immobile has to adapt to the environment to its best capacity, best it can, and tree does. And that explains if there are 100 trees, they all have different shapes, 100 different shapes, because they all have to cope with the individual set of environments. You could almost tell the different levels of light according to the shape of the tree.
Oh, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Because the tree's annual extension of the shoots depends very much on the level of light and then how vertical, how upright it is. Yeah. So tree has this internal mechanism to regulate their growth according to these environments. If the tree matures in this environment, spend many years and hone their adaptation, there comes a moment when you can't really separate landscape from the tree or tree from the landscape, and they are unified in one concept of nature, If the tree is well designed, well executed, and well developed, people can see a landscape in which this tree is growing and survived for centuries, and that gives people instant transportation to this land and then back to time and imagine what has happened. Now we look into examples and explain what thoughts going into bringing these trees to this stage. This is a Korean hornbeam, which I started the work about 10 years ago, I think, and I've been working on it with this view to express landscape through this form. And this is a typical example of a Parkland tree. So this pot is emphasizing horizontal movement.
Yes.
So that matches a landscape which I would like this tree to express.
Right.
Open lands, not so hilly, flat. So this pot expresses this horizontal orientation of the landscape. So this case, basically, it is a vertical tree. And this power, strength of this is to evoke this massiveness of the tree, age of the tree. And then branches show where the light is available and what branches survived so many years. Yeah, and then this is indicated many branches perished, like all the old mature trees would have.
Yes.
And the position where the oldest branch survived is indication of where the light was most favorable. And another thing which is important is the taper. Taper is a very important means to express the age of the line. Yeah, if you have this distance, it's about 20 centimeters, and how many years you can put into this matters as bonsai.
Okay, so how many years do we have in there?
The more, the better.
Yes.
Yeah. So from the thick to thin in this many gradation.
Yes.
In the short distance. This is something I refer to as the inner fullness and outer fullness. Inner fullness is purely our work. Of course, tree has to cooperate, but our work in manipulating light and then inducing more from that area. So when that can replace the production equivalents of the outer fullness, then we could shorten it. And then the taper would really get enhanced.
Yeah.
So within the same distance, you can put in more and more years. And then, this is the apex. Apex of the tree tells you that if it's a pointed apex, what it says is that tree is still growing taller every year. Therefore, this leader growth is still leading. But when tree achieves the maximum height, this urge to grow taller disappears because there's sort of physiological requirement that no trees can grow to over 100 meters, for example. So it settles its own genetically pre-programmed height. And then this dominance of this peak disappears and then start to grow more equally. It would result in more rounded top of the tree. So to express that, we also create this more rounded top.
Right.
So this area, I'm still trying to create very well-tapered, ramified crown which covers this area, but it's still under construction. Yes. But although there's many future projects, but tree has already arrived at the stage where you can start to enjoy. No bonsai finishes. So it's under construction all the way. Tree can get better, but it will never be finished because it's living. With this tree and shape, we're into different landscape from the first one we saw earlier. Species used in this bonsai is field maple, which is very common European English maple, which you find very easily in the commons and so on. And so when I got the material, it was just collected from the woodland and had this very peculiar shape. And I just gave a thought and decided to create this landscape, which is not exactly in Parkland set up, but more higher in the elevation. And you can also see the effects of the landscape and probably the accidents or whatever which caused this first kink in this. It already had it, so where it was growing, it experienced a similar accident, which made this. And then, of course, after that, the tree would have to keep on growing, and then this gets thicker and thicker and becomes a unique form. And then it also had this rather unusual base, exposed roots and so on. It was not so attractive at first, but you have to make best scene for it, So I thought of this exposed roots, which could be the sign of slope. Yes. And it's not very high up in the mountain because the species never grow in such altitude. So this is hillside tree. This pot has wasted sides, yes, and this would make the pot look much lighter. So lightness is the key for lifted landscape. So if you use the heavy-looking pots like sort of bombarded side or straight side, it would go down in landscape. So with this shape, it goes up in the landscape. Now this is a halfway. We have trees which I show later would be of the highest of the altitudes of landscape. So you could appreciate the tree from all different angles. And
I noticed there's this slightly weird formation on the branches.
yes, yes.
I haven't seen before in maples. Would you explain, please?
Yes. These are wings, and this tree, like English elm or euonymus, spindle tree, they form these wings on this year's long shoots, strong shoots.
Would they drop it afterwards, or
No,
is it just
you can see,
lignifies?
but gradually
Yes.
they don't
They just develop bark.
be so pronounced as the first year.
I see.
Yeah, so I suspect this is a sort of structural reinforcement, but this is more rigid and registers the wind better.
Yes.
But once this become quite solid, then they gradually disappear.
Incredible.
As you can see, yeah.
Yes.
So,
Beautiful. You can see it here as well.
yes, it has wings, but
Yes.
it's all disappeared now.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yes.
This is a typical mountain landscape, and species very appropriate because this is Scots pine, which was growing in high mountains in Italy. It already had this interesting shape, but I just focused the essence of this landscape by eliminating all the lines which were irrelevant.
Right.
So those remnants I just left like broken down branch remnants, just to add more interesting story. And this is a tree which really tells you all about what happens in high mountains to a tree like this. Yes. First of all, it never managed to grow tall.
Right.
And perhaps more light comes from the valley side here. And then it has undergone numerous major accidents. First accident was this first major turn in trunk. This suggests that there was a trunk growing that way, which was damaged when it was young, of course. And then once it was a branch here, took over. And then, because light was always more favorable from the valley side, and growing upward was growing for the hazards. Therefore, this is a sort of result of the survival. And then here's another major accident here, which killed the continuation, and then branch took that position over. And so this is, and then in this area where the light is good, somehow tree managed to form its own apex here. Yeah. So if you could manage to show both the nature of the tree as well as the environments it lives in, and then you come up with a form which is convincing in a way, because people can associate with that. Everyone has this image of a tree growing in this landscape, whether they understand very well about the trees or their behavior and so on, but they just have this image which strongly associate with certain landscape. Just a small mention about these designs.
Yes,
this we call picture frame. The effect of this is to make the pot looks a lot smaller than it is.
Oh yeah. Because it creates a point of focus.
Yes. So by making the pot look smaller, as a result, you make the tree look bigger. Yes. So that's the visual effect of this. Scots pine do not carry lots of foliage, so it's quite sparse.
Yes.
So that's the impression I would like to give.
The bark on it is incredible.
Very beautiful. Yes. This bark developed over the last 10 years, and now it's one of the attractions.
Beautiful. It looks very convoluted. The lines look really had a hard time, but
yes, I just selected these lines and then gave them the role to play.
Oh, right, yes.
So it is now like a mountain tree. Yes.
Like
Before it had this line and that line.
Yes.
This shape was buried in it. So I just teased them out, and that's the design work.
Amazing.